Tanse, I'm Kristen Achkate. Welcome to APTN National News. Thank you for joining us. U.S. President Donald Trump has unleashed tariffs against Canada today, setting in motion a trade war between two countries with deeply linked economies, jeopardizing jobs and likely raising consumer prices on both sides of the border.
The United States launched a trade war against Canada, their closest partner and ally, their closest friend. At the same time, they're talking about working positively with Russia, appeasing Vladimir Putin, a lying, murderous dictator. Make that make sense. Canadians are reasonable, and we are polite, but we will not back down from a fight. Not when our country and the well-being of everyone in it is at stake.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says Canada will retaliate, targeting $30 billion worth of goods immediately. He adds Canada will then target the remaining $125 billion worth of American products 21 days later. With 25% tariffs against Canada already here, our APTN reporter Sierra Bettens recently spoke with Indigenous businesses and leaders who are already bracing for the change.
As the U.S. plans to move ahead with tariffs on Canadian goods, President David Chartrand says the Manitoba Métis Federation also has a plan.
Review of all of our supply chains, where we get them from, what we're purchasing, how many are American-owned, how many are in the supply chain that's connected with American products. So we're looking at every facet of our operations.
Chartrand says the MMF has canceled all business travel to the U.S. He's met with Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew and the business community to discuss a path forward for Indigenous business.
We have 800 businesses that are registered with the Louis Capital Corporation, and we're hearing good responses from our businesses. They're all, of course, proud Manitobans and proud Métis, to look at some businesses which have some shared components with United States businesses. So that is something we have to look at very carefully, because some of their supply chains actually will affect their businesses, Métis businesses in Manitoba.
Michelle Cameron, the chair of the Manitoba Indigenous Chamber of Commerce, has also been meeting with Indigenous businesses and leaders about the impending tariffs. But as a business owner herself, she's also bracing for change.
We're trying to source Canadian-owned companies, Canadian-made products, so that we can support Canadian businesses. But it's going to impact us to some degree, because there's some suppliers, some products that we can't get from Canada, that they either are sourced overseas or they're sourced from the U.S. So we're trying to compile a list of Canadian companies and goods where we can source elsewhere outside of the U.S.
Some Indigenous businesses and organizations, like the Canadian Council for Indigenous Business, are looking at mobilizing the Jay Treaty. Since 1794, the treaty has given some Indigenous peoples born in Canada the right to freely cross the U.S. border for trade and commerce. However, Cameron says there are limits.
There's still going to be costs to ship to the U.S. There's going to be costs to bring in product from suppliers in the U.S. for us. So we can do nation business, but there will still be a financial impact depending on where we're doing our business.
In a time of uncertainty, she encourages people to support Indigenous businesses.
A lot of businesses are unsure what's going to happen, so they may be thinking, how am I going to survive this? But if we all stick together and support each other, then we're going to make it through this.
If all goes as planned, 25% tariffs will be tacked on all imports from Canada and Mexico into the U.S. starting tomorrow. Canada has not officially announced retaliatory tariffs at this time, but signaled its intention to do so in early February. Sierra Bettens, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
The head of the Canadian Council for Indigenous Business says Canada needs to start talking about development projects here at home immediately. Tabitha Bull says in light of the tariffs being imposed on Canadian goods and products by U.S. President Donald Trump, Canada needs to get its own house in order. On tonight's episode of Face to Face, Bull says in every crisis there is an opportunity, and there's one for us to look at Canada and strengthen our own supply chains.
I think we really need to look at regulatory barriers on development of projects. I think that definitely includes starting conversations much earlier with respect to Indigenous communities and resources. There's been a lot of conversation about critical minerals, and we need to continue to remind everyone that's talking about critical minerals that the communities in which those minerals exist and those territories need to be at the table. And those conversations have to start now. And that's the same with the conversation that's been had on getting energy to the East Coast.
The largest mining conference in the world kicked off this weekend in Toronto. The Prospectors and Developers Association of Canada, or PDAC, brings together thousands of mining executives, politicians, and investors from across the globe. As Fraser Needham reports, not everyone is on board.
Investors gathered outside the Toronto Stock Exchange to share and show their opposition to the mining industry. Activist Clayton Thomas Muller said he stands in solidarity with communities across the globe. He said due to climate change, the province of Manitoba will soon become the biggest export terminal in the hemisphere.
Canada is going to start exporting all of the resources they're extracting from native lands out of the Hudson Bay because it cuts shipping export lanes by 8,000 kilometers anywhere across Mother Earth. And Hud Bay gold mining and the Hudson Bay Rail in the province of Manitoba have just completed their first rare earth minerals shipment out of the port of Churchill. And Wapcanoe just announced last week that they're going to double rare earth mineral exports out of the port of Churchill. And all of the exports coming from North America are going to go right through Pugatawagan, right through my people's traditional territory. And this is colonization 2.0, folks.
The protesters then marched a few blocks to where the conference is taking place on Front Street. Meanwhile, at a press conference Monday afternoon, the Chiefs of Ontario spoke of their opposition to including the Métis Nation of Ontario in mining development consultations. Temagami First Nation Chief Shelley Moore-Frappier said First Nations in the province have inherent land rights while the MNO is trying to claim rights.
And this is what we're talking about when we're talking about the MNO versus First Nations, because what the Métis Nation of Ontario has done is asserting themselves. So we're talking about assertions versus rights, and that's a really important distinction.
Jason Batiste of the Waban Tribal Council was more blunt.
That there are no historic Métis in our territories. There are none. They don't exist. And yet, Ontario government insists, the Ontario government policy insists that we engage with them, that the industry engage with them.
The mining conference wraps up on Wednesday. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
After decades of fighting for compensation, survivors of the Isle Cross Residential School in northern Saskatchewan have signed a multi-million-dollar agreement in principle with the federal government. Survivors of the Isle Cross Residential Boarding School were left out of a 2016 Indian Residential School Settlement Agreement. Last Wednesday, Canada agreed to pay a $27.3 million settlement package. A formal announcement was made in Isle Cross on Monday. The money will be divided between survivors and families of survivors who passed before 2003 based on the number of years at the school. $10 million will also be put aside for a legacy fund for language and cultural revitalization. The Catholic boarding school opened in the 1820s and operated in northwestern Saskatchewan for more than a century. Mostly Métis children were forced to attend.
This is just the beginning of a fight. We've won this battle, but we haven't quite won the war. So with this settlement with Canada, it's exciting. But we still have a lawsuit against the Saskatchewan government, and we will continue with that. And they need to come to the table.
And you can read more about this story over on our website at www.aptnnews.ca. Now to a sad story out of the United States. A memorial walk and vigil will be held in Salt River, Arizona this evening for 14-year-old Emily Pike. A warning to our viewers, the details in this story are disturbing. Emily Pike disappeared from a group home on January 27th. Her dismembered body, minus her arms and her hands, was found weeks later in garbage bags near a highway in the APTN National Forest in Arizona. An autopsy showed that Pike had face and head trauma. She is from the nearby San Carlos Apache Reservation and had a history of running away from the group home. The family says Emily's case manager waited a week to tell them Emily was missing. The FBI and local police are now investigating. Emily's family says police told them there are 3 suspects they are speaking with, but for now, no arrests have been made. The family says they will celebrate Emily Pike's upcoming 15th birthday in her memory. Emily Pike is being remembered as a happy and kind person who loved to paint and draw. When we come back, we'll take you to a recent round dance celebration in Saskatchewan. Stay with us. Welcome back. For more than 20 years, the Regina Public School Board in southern Saskatchewan has hosted an annual round dance to honor and celebrate both Indigenous and non-Indigenous students. The host high school has changed over the years, but in the spirit of reconciliation this year, the event was held at a school that has never hosted a round dance in its nearly 70-year history. CTV's Mick Favel reports.
Hands were joined and people danced in unison at Sheldon Williams Collegiate's first round dance ever. The dance itself is an Indigenous celebration centered around community building and socialization, an event which has been held in some capacity for many decades.
It's a gathering for Indigenous people in the winter times. When we do a lot of our round dances in the winter, it's time to celebrate life, to share our culture, to share the knowledge of our culture, to invite other cultures to come in and share the beauty of our dance.
Preston Littleton remembers his first round dance in the late 1980s. He says over the years, many alterations have been made to the round dance, including wearing ribbon skirts, as well as the addition of a number of unique dances, making it a spectacle for those in attendance.
I've seen round dances has changed, but some things in the round dance didn't change, like protocols. They have a pipe ceremony, a feast, the round dance, and the giveaway, and along outside they'll have a fire.
For over 2 decades, high schools across Regina have been hosting the Regina Public School Board's annual round dance. Scott Collegiate, a school with a large Indigenous population, has hosted the event the most, something which has changed in recent years.
To see it grow to other school communities has been really exceptional, really awesome to see the growth and to see the diversity of the parents involved, the students involved, the staff involved. We need to celebrate all of the work that they're doing within the school.
Sheldon Williams Collegiate now has over 100 students who identify as Indigenous. Organizers felt now was the right time to show where they are in terms of reconciliation.
Regina Public Schools is all about teaching, learning, and being who you are. And I think this event captures those 3 things. We have elders, knowledge keepers sharing and teaching us. But the biggest thing is just this is Regina Public Schools. It is everyone's system. It is a division that embraces Indigenous individuals and all individuals.
Planning for this year's round dance began in August 2024. Sheldon Williams likely won't be next year's host, but they hope to be considered again in the future.
Love to see it. This week, a special delivery is on its way to children in 6 Manitoba First Nations.
We've got goalie gear, hockey sticks, pucks.
19 skids loaded with 200 hockey bags filled with equipment and even more hockey sticks will be trucked up to the Island Lakes area in Manitoba, including Garden Hill, St. Teresa Point, Red Sucker Lake, and Wasagamok. The new and gently used hockey equipment was collected by Their Opportunity, a children's charity which supports underprivileged children through sport through a drive in the Toronto and Ottawa areas. The organizations and First Nations call the donation life-changing for the children.
Most of all, this keeps them busy and occupied. That's all we want to do for these children. They desperately need it.
The equipment will be handed out to those who will benefit the most during a hockey tournament later this week. 1,900 jackets donated by the Knights of Columbus will also be heading up to the communities with the equipment. We now want to tell you about this week's new web poll question. Over on our website, we ask, do you think a review of the Nutrition North Canada program by the federal government will lead to changes with the Northern Food Subsidy Program? Your answers are yes, no, or scrap it and start over. Go to our website at www.aptnnews.ca to have your say. A first-of-its-kind art exhibit called Queering Indigeneity will make its big debut this summer. We'll speak to the people behind the exhibit when we come back. Stay with us. Halifax -3, Charlottetown -6. The Grand River -10, Cartwright Sun in -12. Saguenay -4, Quebec City -5. Rain in Toronto at 3, Peterborough 3. Big Trout Lake -10, Wawa 2. Churchill -19, Thompson -12. -5 in Gimli, Princess Harbour -5. Partly cloudy in Yorkton at -5, Regina -7. Stony Rapids -8, Buffalo Narrows -3. Fort McMurray 3, Peace River 3. Medicine Hat 4, Red Deer 3. Campbell River 10, Quesnel 7. Sand Spit 8, Smithers 4. Watson Lake -2, Mayo -2. Watee -10, Fort Simpson -5. Sax Harbor -19, Deline -13. Chesterfield -24, Baker Lake -23. And Arctic Bay -24, Aglulik -18. Now to a story south of the border where a first-of-its-kind art exhibit will take place in St. Paul, Minnesota starting June 5th. The Queering Indigeneity exhibit will feature work by 16 Indigenous, Two-Spirit, queer, and gender-diverse artists from the Upper Midwest region. A multi-generational project, artists' ages range from 20 to over 70 years old, showcasing their unique perspectives on identity. Joining us now to talk about Queering Indigeneity are organizers Penny Kagagabi, an Ojibwe Two-Spirit artist, and Kate Bean, Executive Director of the Minnesota Museum of American Art, where the exhibit will be displayed. Tanse, Penny, and Kate, thank you so much for joining us. My first question is for Penny. Can you tell us how this art exhibit is the first of its kind?
So to my knowledge, I looked around and I haven't been able to find anywhere else where there's been a collection of Two-Spirit, Native, queer, and gender expansive artists in the Upper Midwest, U.S., and including Canada. Having that tied to this land on Turtle Island in the very center of the continent, and then also that this represents a great diversity in age range. There's 50 years between our elders and the youngest of the artists included. 80% of the artists are under 40 years of age, and 70% of them are exhibiting for the first time. But more than that, I've been referring to this as more of a community collaboration with a side order of an exhibit. It's really leaning heavily into how to serve the community, and the exhibit is a big part of that, but it is only a part of it.
Thank you for all that great info. And Kate, how and why did this project come to be?
So this project came to be because of relationship building. Our institution had a wonderful former curator who we worked with named Laura Joseph, who developed a relationship with Penny and started, they started communicating about what can some possibilities be in terms of working with one another. The Minnesota Museum of American Art, all of our exhibits and all of the work that we do is partnership based. It's all collaborative, it's all co-curation, working with partners. We're not the authority. I'm a Native person who entered the museum field in order to change the field and to try and do things differently. And in order to do that, we have to really think about shared visions and shared values. And when Penny was introduced to me, we found out that we had a lot of mutual friends and relatives. Indian country's small, and we started mentioning names, and we were like, oh yeah, I know them, or they're my cousin. And so a really, really sweet relationship that was formed as relatives, really, and I think it was a natural fit. And it's just been so exciting to get to know Penny and the team and to be able to share resources and be of the same mind to create a space that is so needed right now for our communities.
That's so great to hear. And Penny, what types of art can we expect to see for this exhibit?
It's, again, reflective of the artists that are included. It's really, really diverse. We have when I initially talked to artists about bringing forward what they wanted to put in the exhibit, I asked them to dig into their wildest ideas, because I really wanted them to have the freedom to bring forward things that they didn't think would be accepted maybe in regular exhibits. So some of them make a direct political statement, some of them do not. There's sculptures and poetry, fiber art, beadwork and basketry, paintings and prints. We have videos and digital work. And then I've noticed as pieces are coming forward, there's a real interesting combination of mixed media. So you're finding beadwork on photographs, and it's exciting work.
That's so interesting. And Kate, I hear there may be more iterations of the show in the near future. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so we don't like to do one-off projects. Again, we're all about building relationships and keeping those relationships going and realizing that art is a living being, and everything that we create together has a continuance. And trying to figure out how to support this project in different iterations is something that we're really invested in. We see this as a multi-year project. And we don't see the exhibit as the end of any sort of project. I think there's all kinds of opportunities to continue to share the work and the creativity of the artists and the ways in which we're doing this collaboration within other spaces. We are also talking about possibly extending the show a little bit, because I think that the public really wants to have the time to be able to come see this exhibit. But it's more than just an exhibit. We're putting life out into the world, and I think there's a lot of different spaces where that life can be, and where we can help share what is created throughout this experience. And so we don't know exactly what direction it will go in. And I think that's part of the exciting piece, because, again, this is out of respect for our creativity within our communities and the ways in which art is a part of our very being, who we are and how we live. And so we don't know where it's going to go, but we're excited to see where it takes us.
Well, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you both for telling us about this great and groundbreaking exhibit. Thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Thank you, Miigwech.
And that's your daytime newscast for this Tariff Tuesday. Dennis Ward is back for your evening newscast in a few hours. Make sure to join us then. From all of us at APTN National News, hi, miigwech, masicho. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again. Ekse.